Alrighty. So I hope all of you guys have got the latest version of Excel. If you go to this data tab and click on this get data, you should see these kind of options. Your options might be a little bit different, but you should at least see these options like from file, from database, and from other things. Okay. This is where we start to get into the Power Query territory, right? All these other functions that we talked about, it just generic Excel functions, and we still use that. But when we use Excel as a data analyst, this is how we would want to approach it. What usually happens as a data analyst, how things will happen is you will have data residing somewhere, right? So maybe you have that data in a CSV format, or you have your data in a database, or the data exists somewhere, right? So the first thing that you need to do is you need to be able to import the data into Excel, right? So you will get the data from the source, but you won't touch the source, right? You won't double click on that Excel spreadsheet and start manipulating or start editing that. Because if you do that, you are changing the source, and you're not supposed to change the source. So we should not manipulate the source data. What we should do is we spin up our Excel spreadsheet and we load that data from that Excel spreadsheet so that we are not directly changing the data on that Excel spreadsheet. It always stays exactly the way it was, but we can do all of our manipulations and calculations on our Excel by loading that data from there. And that's what I will show you now, is how you load that data from other sources into Excel. Okay. So for example, if I go to get data, and maybe for now, I will go to either from an Excel spreadsheet or text CSV. So I hope I have got some CSV. Let's load this one. Okay. And again, I'll give you a CSV, and that will be the CSV we will work with on the rest of the session. But I'm just trying to give you an example. What I just did is I just used this get data function to load the data from a CSV into this Excel spreadsheet. And it hasn't come to this Excel spreadsheet yet. This is just a preview. But here you can see what the data looks like, right? So it has got columns, and it has got the so one, so two, so three, whatever, and all of them looks like their text. So now what I can do is I can click on this load, which means it will load this data into my Excel. Or I can click on transform if I want to do some transformations on this data. And most of the time, I will just click on the transform data, because I would want to transform this data before I load it onto my Excel. Okay. So I will click on transform data, and then it will take me to this Power Query editor. And this is what we need to learn about, because this is where we'll spend most of our time on. This is the Power Query editor. So this is like a transient period between you have that data in the source and it hasn't been loaded to Excel yet. So this is in between period, and you can transform your data in this in between period, right? Because it will read the data, it will transform it, and it will only load the data into Excel after this transformation. And we talked about this ETL approach. So it's extract, transform, and load, right? So the extract in this example is reading the data from CSV. That's extract. We have done the extract because we can see this preview here. Now we are trying to do the transform, which is maybe we will try to figure out what column, what data type it is. Maybe we will remove some duplicates or remove some nulls and those kind of things. That will be our transform. And once we are happy with the transform, we will go into the load phase where we will load the data into our Excel. Maybe we will do some visualizations or whatever it is. That will be after the load stage where the data has already been loaded into Excel. Okay. Just keep in mind that the data that you are seeing here, it hasn't already been loaded to Excel. It's the transient period, right? So that's how this will work. So this is similar as the Excel interface. So there is your ribbon. There are different tabs in here as well, functionalities. And then on this side, you can see this, the name, which is just name of this CSV. And then here you can see these applied steps, which is all the steps or all the transformations that we have applied to this source. Okay. So right now we haven't done much, and it happened automatically is that it read from the source. So that's, you can see the step is source. And then what it did is it changed the type. So it figured out what data type goes well for each column, and it changed the data type, and all of them are text, but it hasn't done something yet, which is the first row of the data was supposed to be the name of the column, but it couldn't figure that out. And what it did, it just assigned column 1, column 2, column 3 as the column names. And then it skipped the column name is here, which is not what we want. We would want to promote these rows as headers, right? Because these are the actual column headers, not column 1, column 2. And that's where the transform will come in, and we will transform this data to match our expectation, right? So the first transform that I would want to do is use first row as header. You can see this transform is here. So I will click on that, and that gives me exactly what I expect, right? The first row, which was username, so 1, so 2, so 3, that is now the column name of my table. And that's exactly what I want. So I can say that, okay, from here, just remove the empty. So if there were any empty username, you will take them out. And then I can do all the other things that I want to do. And once I'm done with the transform, I will click on here and say close and load. And what that does is that's the time when it will actually read the data from the source. It will apply all these transforms, and then it will load that data into Excel. The main thing why we are doing it here, instead of just load the data into Excel and do it in Excel itself, is this applied steps thing. Right? Because everything that you do in here is captured in this applied step. And for instance, like if you want to go back and maybe you did something wrong, you want to take out that step, or maybe you want to change the ordering of those steps, that's where you will do it. Right? Next day, when I get a new CSV, all I need to do is just refresh the data, and it will automatically apply all these steps to the new CSV as well. And that's what we want, right? Because again, as a data analyst, we want our steps to be repeatable, right? We probably need to do that analysis every day or every week or whatever it is. And we want it to be repeatable. And that's exactly what we get with this Power Query Editor, is that every transformation step that we apply to our source is being captured here, so that we can apply that same transformation step to any new CSVs in the future. And we can actually see this code itself. All the things that we did by clicking here and there, it's actually being captured as code, right? So again, what being repeatable means is you have defined everything in code, or everything is being tracked. All of your steps are being tracked, so that you can always reproduce that result. And that's the entire reason we focus so much on this Power Query Editor. And the way I like to say it is, anything that you can do in Power Query Editor, you should do in Power Query Editor. Because everything that you do here, it's being tracked, it's repeatable, and it's the right way to do it. Right? So that's the story behind how we do the entire ETL process in Excel. And we'll do this entire process. I will let you load the data, let you do the transforms, and then we'll see how we load the data into Excel and how we do further analysis in Excel. So once I'm happy with the transform, I will just do close and load. And what that will do is it will load that data into my Excel, and it will load it as a table. So I can see this is my table, probably has numbers data, but still I have got this table. Right? And now I can do whatever I want with this table. So what we're doing here is that CSV where this original data exists. We are not touching that at all. It exists on its own, right? So we are not touching anything. If I go here and change this Ozark to dark, that doesn't affect the original CSV. The original CSV still has Ozark in there, right? So I changed something on my Excel, but it hasn't changed that in the CSV. So what I can do is if I want this data to be refreshed again, I can just click on this refresh and it should go back to its original thing. Because the original source hasn't changed. The original source, which is the CSV, always has the source of truth. Right? So I can always refresh it. And when I refresh it, it applies all those transformation steps. So that's why I get the right column name. I get rid of duplicate. I get rid of null values as well. If this is the first time you are seeing the Power Query Editor, it might be a bit overwhelming, but we will walk through it step by step anyway. But I just wanted to show you the entire process of the ETL with Power Query. Okay, so what I want you to do is just make sure that you have got this option on your Excel. And if you have that option, then we can continue on with the next step where we will load new data into Excel and start doing some of those transformations. What we say was the first thing that we need to do when we get the data. This is like a typical workflow. Like you get the data from somewhere and now you want to start your data project. You want to start your CSV. You don't open that CSV. Don't ever edit the source. We will import the data into our own Excel, and that's where we'll make all the edits. So the first rule, don't ever edit the source that you got. What we'll do now is I'll get rid of this and I will open up Excel, press new Excel, applying it. And just to make sure that I don't lose my work, I will also save it. I'll call it Superstore Analysts. And I will save it on my documents. That way I'm sure that I don't lose anything that I work on here. Right? Just a fresh new Excel. Don't worry about the CSV yet. So everyone open up the fresh new Excel spreadsheet. Go to the data tab and go to get data. And then from file, go to CSV. So not the source that I get is a CSV file. So let's go to CSV. And just go to that file, wherever you downloaded it, and open that file. And when you click open file, don't click on the load because we don't want to load it directly. We want to transform it. So click on transform. So in the Power Query Editor or like in any transform operation, you need to make sure that you have got the data in the right format. So the first thing we will check is obviously the columns that you expect to be in the data. Are they in there or not? For example, I don't know much about this data, but yeah, there is row ID, there is order ID, there is order date, ship date. Yeah, maybe these are the columns that I was expecting. I can see all of those columns are there. That will be my step one check. And step two, what I will do is I will check the data type of each column, right? So order ID, that looks like a text. So it is a text. It's okay. This one, order date, looks like a date to me, but it's being treated as a string. So we will probably change that later on. And same with this date as well. That looks like a date to me, but it's not being treated as a date. It's being treated as a string. So this postal code are all the numbers and its data type is also number. So that's expected. That's good. Quantity is a number. So it's being treated as a number. Discount is being treated as a decimal. And we've got profit, which is being treated as a number, which is fine. Maybe we can change this data type to, now, so we got decimal number, current number, percentage. Maybe we want this to be percentage because this is a discount. So maybe the correct data type for this column is not a decimal, but a percentage. So it's easier to read and it makes sense. So if you want to change the data type of column, you can just right click on it and say change type and change it to whatever type you want. So I want this to be percentage. So let's keep it a percentage. So what it is asking is that do you want to update that itself to directly convert it into percentage? Or do you want to add a new step saying that first convert it into decimal, then convert it into percentage? So I don't care like whatever way it does it, like it doesn't matter because the result will be the same. So I can either click replace current or I can add a new step. But for now, just replace current because we don't want two steps in it. Right? So now it has been converted to percentage and you can see how it looks like. And let's do the same for the profit because that looks like a dollar value to me. Right? So let's change its data type to currency. Right? So you can see it's now a dollar value. Sales, I think we need to change that to a dollar value as well. So just convert it into currency. So now that we have done that, let's go on to the date because date usually is always tricky. And the reason behind that is because date can have any format, right? So it can be day, month, year, or it can be month, day, year. You can use slashes, you can use dash, or you can even use space or whatever weird format you want to say. Some might say like January, February. Some might also say just Jan, Feb. There are like 1,000 different ways people can specify dates. And that's one of the reasons this kind of tool sometimes struggle to pick up that date format correctly. And that's what has happened here. Because this format is not the format that it was expecting. So it couldn't recognize this as a date. But in our analysis, if we want to do the analysis where we're like, okay, give me the orders from between this date and that date, you would want this column to be treated as a date column. Otherwise, those queries are not going to work because if this is not the date column, it is just a text string. Cannot do those kind of queries. Okay, give me a summary of all the sales in from yesterday or from last week or whatever that is. So let's try to convert it into a date type. And I will try to convert it. But there is an issue, which is here you can see there are lots of errors. The error here is because of this. So it is saying that it cannot convert the date value of 4/15/2017 because it expects the day number or the month number, or whichever way it is, to be zero padded, which means it expects 2 digits. Even if it is like 1, it has to be 01. Even if it is 3, it has to be 03. So that's the expectation was, but it couldn't meet the expectation. It didn't make the expectation. And maybe the other thing was because looks like if we look at this date, I can say that this is month. The first thing is month. Second thing is day. And the third thing is year. But what the Excel was expecting was something like this. And that's where the misalignment came from. So what we need to do now is we need to tell Excel that this data is actually in this format so that it understands, okay, this data is in this format. So we'll parse it that way. Right. So we need to tell that. And that's where we will need to work with some of those DAX formulas. Okay. So that was probably one learning as well is if you're trying to do something that might break, you might need to take that step back. It's usually good to add that as a step. Right? So I'll find this order date and I will convert this date type date to text so that we back to where we started. What I can do is if this thing doesn't work out, I can simply take out that step and it will go back as how it used to be. So now let's try to fix this. And the way to fix this now will be to create a calculated column. So what I will do is we will create a calculated column, which is based on this column so that we can convert it into a proper date. And before we do that, maybe I'll show you a simple example of calculated date first. And then I'll show you that bit more complicated one. So from the sales, if we take the profit, that's probably our cost of operation. So let's try to calculate that and add it as a new column called the operation cost. So let's try to add a calculated column here, which is the sales minus profit. And to do that, we will go to this add column tab, and then I can do a custom column. So the first thing I want to do is I want to name this column. It is cost of operation. And the cost of operation is, I can choose the columns from here, sales. And I want to do sales minus profit. So that will be the new column, which will be sales minus profit. And again, because this is coming as 1, 2, 3, so we'll change the data type to be currency because that's a currency as well. Right. So we just added a new column that was based on some other column. And then now we also change the data type at that column. All right. Can you try that on your end? All right. So now that we know how we calculate, how we do simple calculated columns, let's try to do that one. That date is not being formatted well, so we need to change it. So what we need to do is we need to parse. Yep. So what we need to use is we need to use this date and we need to use this parse option. So we need to parse the date. All right. So we are parsing the date from order date. And what we will do is we need to change the format. So let's do it the proper way, right? So we'll go to add column. We'll add a custom column and we will call it format because we are going to format it. And for this, we know we need the date formula. And this is where you will find all the functions that you can use in this Power Query Editor. And right now, what we're interested in is date functions. So we'll go to date functions. And what we need to do is we need to get a date from text because we have got a text and we want to convert it into date. So this is the formula that we need, which is date from text. And this is how the syntax look like. All right. So this is how the formula will look like. So let's copy this and let's try to make it work on our use case. All right. So I just copied the formula from there and putting it here. So the date text comes from the order date. So I will insert the order date there. And the format that we have is MD. So what we're saying is create a date from this text. And this is what the format looks like. Okay. So we have got the month in the front. There's a slash, there is a day, and then there is the year, right? And if that was the case, then boom, we just converted that into date and it's coming in this format. And now hopefully if we change it to date, it will be correctly formatted as a date. So what we said is this is the function called create the date from the text. And we give it the order date and we give it the format that order date was in, right? But there are different ways we specify month and day. There are zero padded months and there are zero padded days. When we look at our data, it looks like it didn't have the zero padding, right? So when it was 4/15/2017, it didn't have the zero padding. So that's why when there is no zero padding, it's represented by only one M. If it was like 04, it would be two M's. If it is just 04 and 1, it will be 1D because the day is not padded. If it is padded, you will have 2. If it is not padded, it will be 1. In our case, this is how our data looks like. So this is what the format would look like. Once you know that format, you put that format in that formula, and then it will convert it into a proper date. Because this thing will come again and again. Even in SQL, we will have date formatting issues. The most common issue you will come across in analytics. The date format will always be horrible. It's always hard to parse those date formats. Okay, so if you get that, then I assume you would have also got this right in your Excel. So you have got this date order formatted. Me a thumbs up when you have got this column. And what I want you to do is I want you to do the same for the other date column that we had, which is the ship date. So I want you to do the exact same thing for the ship date. This is the link that you should bookmark because this is where you will find all the functions. And again, like I said, it's impossible to remember all these functions. What you need to know is you just need to be able to find the function that might help you, and you need to know how to use it. For example, if I'm interested in text functions, and then I'm like, okay, how do I get rid of non-alphanumeric characters? Or how do I split things from comma? So those are the kind of things I will see here, and I'll try to find, and okay, maybe it is split, right? And I will look at the split and say, okay, what does the split do? So it can split the text at the given delimiter. So if I want to split at comma, I can probably use this to split at comma. So that's the level of familiarity we need. Is you need to know where to look for. That's the first thing, right? So if you know where to look for, you can find things and you can use it to your need. I'll just copy this. And I will just add a custom column. Use the same formula. It's called not order date now. It's the zip date. Zip date formatted. And I will change the type to be done. So that's pretty much what we want to do. Maybe let's try to do one or more transforms. Let's get rid of this row ID. So I remove this column because it's not much relevant. So I will just get rid of this. So I will remove it. And order ID, because that's an important column. So what I will do is if the order ID is null, I want to get rid of that data as well. So I will just do drop down here. And then I will say remove empty. That means if there was any null order ID, it will get rid of that, which is good. And I can do those sort of things to other columns as well. So now I think our data is ready. So I will just go ahead and I can go to this home tab and then I will say close and load. So what that will do is now apply all the steps that we just did to the entire data and it will load it into Excel. So now we have got this data nice and well formatted into our Excel and all those calibrated columns are there as well, right? So the order date formatted, zip date formatted, that's all in here. And now here we can change whatever we want. Like for example, these profit and cost of operation. We can just select these columns and I say, okay, this is $1. And then if I want to change this dollar to be not dollar, but euro, then we can do euros as well or whatever. So that's how we will do it. And discount seems to be percentage. So let's get that to percentage. All right. So our data looks good here. Now let's try to do some analysis on